Hello and welcome back to Warcraft Daily for today, the 18th of November 2013. So in today's news we have a whole bunch of quite interesting stuff actually. First of all, there's some rumours about the Karazhan cleanup in patch 5.4.2. Then we're going to follow that up with a whole bunch of Twitter stuff. Essentially, it's just a giant Q&A with Ghostcrawler about a wide range of things, ranging from Warlords of Draenor to flying to PvE, a few different things. It's all quite good. Anyway, so Karazhan. Now you may remember that a few days ago in WoW Daily I said about 5.4.2 and how they added a new phase called Karazhan Restored. And, well, a few beady-eyed people in the MMO Champion forums have managed to find some data mine some screenshots and stuff like that, and essentially they have removed a few of the cobwebs and just some of the world objects that were placed in there to make it look a little bit more older and dilapidated. So this begs the question, well, what's going on here? First of all, I'd like to say that the textures are, things like that, not changed at all, and we so far do not know anything about the crypt. If you don't know about the crypt, there's essentially a giant crypt underneath Karazhan, and the, I suppose, rather surprising thing about it is how extremely dark it is. And I don't mean dark in terms, well, okay, it's dark because it's a crypt, but it's full of corpses that are impaled and stuff, and it's definitely a departure from how dark World of Warcraft usually goes. It's quite macabre and horrible and ugh. So yeah, it is all very interesting, this whole Karazhan thing. Of course, Karazhan was the first raid for a lot of people. It was the first raid I went into, that's for sure. And yeah, what could this be? Well, it could be really simple. It could be a return or a revamp. It could be, say, maybe they revamp it, put in one or two new things and scale it up, and then that's us tied it over into the Warlords of Draenor. Could be that. Maybe it is a new dungeon, maybe it's a new scenario, or perhaps it's a part of the opening event for Warlords of Draenor. Honestly, at this stage, we just can't know, but I really hope that they open up these crypts, because, well, the crypts are very cool, and there's a lot of interesting speculation going on about it. I suggest watching Danger Dolan's video on it, it's very good. There is some sort of cool stuff about, there's some lore about a reversed upside down Karazhan that at the very bottom has Medivh's chambers, and some cool stuff like that. Honestly, I might do a lore video on Karazhan because this is bringing Karazhan into the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and it's a really damn cool place with really interesting lore. So yeah, I might go back into that. Anyway, let's move on to the questions and answers. So first of all, for the beta, when asked how, sort of like about a rough beta date, and being at the, if it was before the end of February or not, Ghostcrawler said that he didn't know. And I suppose some people could take this and say, oh, well, the expansion's clearly coming later. This means that he didn't know, and they can't talk about the sort of stuff like this until the company's made a firm decision and they have an announcement to make, because this affects more than just the World of Warcraft development team. Well, I mean, it mainly affects them, but also it affects the Battle.net people putting stuff up on the website, and it is, I suppose, also a bit of a business decision, because betas are very big for publicity and that sort of thing. What I would say is that Ghostcrawler also did say that they are closer along now than they were for the Mists of Pandaria beta. Well, okay, not the Mists of Pandaria beta, but just Mists of Pandaria in general. Now, I just checked there that the Mists of Pandaria beta came out on the 20th of March. Now, that means that if they're further along on this current expansion than they were at this point with Mists of Pandaria, then it stands to reason that the beta for this will start before the beta for Mists of Pandaria, because they did very much firmly hint in so many different ways that this expansion will be coming out at I suppose a sooner date from BlizzCon than Mists of Pandaria did. So perhaps it's going to be mid to early summer, late spring, something like that. I'd say mid-summer, early summer is probably the most likely thing. Although that said, is summer really that good a release date? Because a lot of people, I suppose in a lot of MMOs, people disappear over the summer. So I'd say maybe spring. If they're going from a pure business decision and the content would be ready in time, then I think they'd probably go in spring. Anyway, that's enough of beta talk. They also said that for tank DPS, they're going to change Vengeance so that it only affects defenses, and it makes tank abilities hit harder. This allows tank DPS to stay relevant, but not be crazy enough, not be ultra crazy like they were in some fights. However, they might still do quite well in AoE fights. That makes sense. And honestly, I don't have a problem with tanks doing really well in AoE fights, because it's really fun to do well in AoE fights, and people should be able to have fun, and it's one of those unique little things that can be enjoyable. Therefore, keep it in the game, I think it's cool. They also said that DPS snapshotting is not really going to continue. well, I mean, it hasn't continued for a long time, but the reason for that is because it would mean they wouldn't be able to do as many stat boosts on trinkets and abilities. Now, if you don't know what DPS snapshotting is, there's some things like dots that when you cast them, they just take a snapshot of a current value of one of your stats, and then they go based on that stat. Now, that was cool for a lot of really high-end people because they could line things up so that they were casting their dots and abilities such as those whenever their stats were at their highest, so during like trinkets or maybe the orc racial or stuff like that. Now, that's really been sort of taken out because they don't like how that worked, which I suppose is fair enough because the gameplay isn't really coming from your abilities being interesting, it's just really from Blizzard's implementation and code. Still, I think DPS snapshotting was really fun for those of us who were able to use it, but yeah, there you go. Not a giant amount to say on that. They also said that druids will be getting no new form models. A little bit unfortunate if you're a druid, but they did say that they had been updated relatively recently. I don't remember an update, but I don't play a druid, so there you go. Also for hunters, and this was in response for somebody who was asking to bring back sniper training. If you don't know what sniper training is, well, it gave us increased damage when we stood still for a certain amount of seconds, which was cool because it meant there was some decision making on whether you moved or not. And Ghostcrawler said that the thing with hunters is that you should be willing to take a DPS hit in sort of return for 100% movement. Now, sniper training isn't in the game, and honestly, it was an extremely fun talent. Not fun, but it, I suppose, flavored up the gameplay because you wanted to still place yourself efficiently and move efficiently rather than just being 100% mobile all the time. I don't really think, like, being 100% mobile is fine, but it should be at a DPS loss, but I still think that we should have sniper training or something similar to that there, so that we are in a standstill situation, we can get a little bit more DPS, and that might help. Just, I don't know, I think it could be fun, I suppose. Anyway, yeah, it's an ability I miss. Moving on to other things, they were talking about flying, and it's still a hot topic, and here's what Ghostcrawler had to say. In patch 6.1, the regular Draenor zones won't be current, hence that's why they're allowing flying in them. And he also said that Draenor is a world of giants. The world's big, it's savage, and it's scary. And it's going to feel that way when you're on the ground in the world. It's not going to feel that way when you can just fly over the danger. And I think this is actually right. Imagine the Fel Reaver in Hellfire Peninsula if your first time through the zone, when you're leveling or killing something and you just hear that big noise in the background, your screen starts shaking, you turn around, oh shit, Fel Reaver's there. Well, that's fine, I'll just mount up and fly away. Less effect. And they did say that there would be giants, like really big giants, patrolling around the world and being dangerous and scary and cool, so I think that's quite nice. They also said that the whole no flying thing, it's one of those things that doesn't have an immediate value, but it is good for the game. A bit like raid trash, repair bills, lesser charms, that kind of thing. And a lot of people, well, when you can fly when you're questing, you just swoop down, kill the quest target, fly away. Swoop down, open the cage, fly away, engage in no combat, don't do anything like that. And a lot of people would see that as being, oh yeah, it's great, it's efficient. But what it really does is it kind of detracts from the questing experience in a way that you don't really particularly notice, other than you just sort of think to yourself, huh, that questing really wasn't as fun as it was like in Wrath or something. Game design's weird because, as I have said and Blizzard have said, many other people have said many times, players know what they like, but they don't know what they want, and they don't really know how to get more of what they like. They will often go via the easiest, most sort of at the front simple way, but often that isn't really the best way to do things. And finally, let's round it off with some PvE things. So first of all, they said that for lockouts, all you need to do to unlock Mythic mode is complete Heroic, so it's pretty much the same as it is now. And if you're a Mythic prone guild, then the normal mode's probably way too easy and unrewarding, which is definitely fair enough. Also, raids are being delayed a week or two from launch, and the current plan is that normal and heroic will launch in week 2, then mythic will unlock in week 3. This is essentially what they did in Mists of Pandaria, and it was good because it meant that for leveling, the whole race to world first for these bosses didn't include leveling, and it's not really fair or sort of good gameplay that it included leveling. And that after week 3, LFR will unlock at some point. They haven't really decided when yet. And finally, about the flexible modes, most breakpoints in encounter difficulty will be fixed. The reason the way they're doing this is because, say if there's something like Malkorok, and he spawns his 3 little pools on the ground on 10 player mode. Well, if you are there with 10 people, then you have 100% chance of spawning 3. But if you're there with 12 people, you have an 80% chance of spawning 3 and a 20% chance of spawning 2. So that way, the average amount of things that spawn per player will be the same throughout all difficulty levels. Now, I'd be concerned that this might cause a minor spike at some points. Like, if it's only a 20% chance, then it means that it's sort of proportionally a little bit harder to get when you get the extra thing. That said, having the extra person means that every other chance that it goes to the 80% in this specific example means that it is on average a little bit easier. So I suppose on the whole it does balance out, and honestly it's a decent trade-off, just providing that they make it work with breakpoints. Hopefully they can do that. Anyway, that's it for today's show. The other video today will be Black Hand the Destroyer. We'll talk about some lore with him, and I'm probably going to do a Karazhan video at some point because, hey, it seems interesting and I fucking love Karazhan. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you next time.